The Cannabis Conversation. A European perspective on the emerging legal cannabis industry.
Welcome to the Cannabis Conversation with Anush Desai, where we explore the new legal cannabis industry by speaking to the professionals that are helping shape it. Hope you all had a good week. A very interesting week again on the news front. Lot of excitement coming out of Germany. For the few of you that may have missed it, the future German coalition government has just announced its plans to, quote, introduce the regulated sale of cannabis to adults for consumption purposes in licensed stores. This is obviously a very positive sign, and understandably, people are getting a little excited, maybe a little carried away on LinkedIn. The government still hasn't actually even been officially formed yet, and so they've still got a bit of work there to do there. And then I guess this would probably have to be discussed in the parliament and proper plans agreed around it. I'm not sure what the full details are yet. So all of that's still unclear, and as with everything, these things do tend to take longer than people expect. I was reminded of this when Trump lost the election last year and everyone thought that federal legalization was imminent. That doesn't appear to be the case, and there hasn't been any real indication of that happening very soon. Nevertheless, all of this is exciting because it all shows that things are moving in the right direction, and it would be absolutely massive for Europe if Germany did start to make moves in this area, because I think it would inspire others and perhaps even give them a framework and roadmap to look to roll it out in their own jurisdiction. So, exciting times. I also had a really good trip to Denmark recently for the Medical Cannabis Symposium just outside Copenhagen, which I mentioned on the show a few weeks ago. Copenhagen's a beautiful city to visit, and it was great to be away, my first conference since the pandemic. Very interesting to meet a variety of people out there in Denmark. There are some really impressive companies out there doing a lot of great things. And I also managed to make it up to Odense, which is about a couple of hours north of Copenhagen, where there's a little cannabis hub there too of companies. For those that don't know, Denmark is very highly regarded in the pharmaceutical space for having extremely high standards. And these are now being applied in the medical cannabis field. So it was very much a scientific-based conference or symposium with some very smart people, and as you would expect from the Danes, they're building a really high quality industry. So I think the rest of Europe can really look to some of the great work they're doing there. I also managed to get quite a few pod interviews done with Danish businesses while I was out there, so I'll be releasing those over the next few weeks. One kind of general point that this whole exercise reminded me of was that I really do enjoy being around lots of early stage businesses and helping them try to crack this game. So it really reinforced that this is an area where I really want to help. So if you're an early stage business and you're looking to raise investment, please do get in touch with me. I'd love to see if we at Canvas can help you. Anyway, on with this week's episode, all about CBD as a hero ingredient. Enjoy. On today's show, I have Tony Reeves. Tony is advisory board member of EIHA, which is the European Industrial Hemp Association, and also advisor to leading CBD brand Nordic Oil. Tony generally works as a CBD consultant, working with regulators, government and industry. He also happens to be one of my favorite people in the industry. So I'm really pleased to have him on. Tony, welcome. How are you?
Thank you, Anush. You're also my favorite person in the industry. I much appreciate your introduction. I'm good. Nice to speak to you, as always.
Absolutely. Where in the world are you?
I'm in a tiny place called Malvern in Worcestershire, famous for its hills and Elgar. The Queen used to drink the water, apparently, or maybe the corgis did. And the last British sports car is made about 2 miles away from where I'm sitting, called the Morgan.
Ah, beautiful. Yeah, I've been to Malvern. It's a gorgeous place. So I hope you're enjoying it today.
Absolutely. Even the clouds are nice here. So.
Yeah, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. Cool. Tony, there's loads to talk about. I actually haven't done an episode on CBD in quite a while, actually. So, yeah, we'll talk a bit about some of the great work that you're doing and the interesting sort of areas you're getting involved in. But we'll start with a bit about you. And if you could just sort of introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background and how and why you got into the wonderful world of cannabis.
The best way to describe my journey is serendipity, really. Never planned. So I was the European Managing Director for a meat-free business. We were selling into Holland and Barrett, the cooperative, big own label contract with Tesco. So lots of meatballs, vegetarian meatballs, chicken strips, mince, etc., etc. Ironically, I just didn't like soya, which is the main the plant protein we're using. I didn't like how it felt, the environment, and lots of other things. So I was looking for an alternative plant protein, pea protein, the usual suspects. And it was over breakfast. It was my wife who actually said, what about hemp? Now, like most people, my knowledge of hemp was it's a good bait for roach, isn't it? And it is. We used to make ropes from it. Yes, we did. Or can you smoke that and get a really good afternoon? No, you can't. It's pointless. But that's all my knowledge was. Anyway, so I started my research, and actually that morning I found this guy in Phoenix who had a patent for extracting protein from hemp seed. I had a chat with him, and he said, well, if you're interested in hemp, speak to nice guys in Vancouver called the Holmes family, because they started the industry 15 years ago, the hemp seed industry in Canada. And I did. And a few months later, I was in Vancouver, and they were impressive, passionate, loved the product. They introduced me to this 20,000 applications. It was a long week. But the end of it, I could go nowhere else but hemp. I was just totally sort of wedded to it. And I joined them. So for 3.5 years, I was working with European MD for Hempco, and they became Aurora Hemp. They were bought out by Aurora Cannabis. And this is why I discovered that I had to be an educator stroke evangelist, rather than my initial view was I'd be talking commercially to Waitrose and Tesco's and all the other people, which I did because I knew them all anyway from previous life. But the knowledge of hemp was at the same level as mine, which was almost non-existent. So I became a hemp educator by default, not by design. But the more I learned, the more I was trapped in this black hole called hemp, because it's amazing stuff. And I became, really about the same time, a board advisor to EIHA. And very quickly, I was in front of regulators, because that's the big issue that we've had since then, and we still have. So I was with representing to MHRA, FSA, laterally the Home Office, and winning the battles. So the big one with MHRA was about whether or not it's a drug, therefore don't do it without marketing authorization, which equals several million in quite a few years. So back in 2016, the industry could have stopped, because there's no way, to be fair, a brand could go through marketing authorization. It's too much money, too much time. The industry would have stopped. And brands were dropping out then. There was a heady day in 2016 when they issued the letter, same time as the German counterpart actually, saying, stop doing it. You're making medical claims. You've got no marketing authorization. We think it's a drug because it's clearly active, because you keep telling us how amazing the stuff is, and we sort of believe you, and the research was there. Luckily, we managed to persuade them that it could coexist as homeostasis supplement and a medicine. A lot of that was based on the dosage that people were getting in medical trials, which could be up to 1,000 milligrams a day. 1,000 milligrams a day, just to repeat. And you think homeostasis usage, typically we're talking, maybe 50 milligrams or whatever. In fact, the FSA have come up with 70. So we argue at the time, success with MHRA, that anything up to 200 milligrams looked like a homeostasis. Anything above that looked like a medicine. And there were a nice group of people. They listened to the argument, and we won the day. So that was my first and exciting approach with the regulators, and it hasn't really stopped since. By the way, you do have to stop me, because I will go on for the next 5 hours.
Well, I am going to jump in, because we're going to get onto CBD as the kind of hero ingredient, which is the main topic, a little bit later on. But what was really interesting is, I cover the broad church of cannabis on this show, and I love that fact, but I haven't really come at it from the food angle, which is where you've come from. And, before I ask you a bit more about your background, maybe you could do a bit of a sales pitch on the kind of nutritional value of hemp as a food source.
Well, in part of my evangelical tour, my road trip, I met with a director of a huge food service organization, and they had just started with quinoa, whatever pronunciation we want. And I said, you do realize that quinoa is 14% protein, quinoa seed. Hemp is 33%. No. So this is one where there was that lack of knowledge. So it's very high protein. The Lux Research Institute, about 2017 or something, they looked at plant proteins, 22 of them. And the one with the highest potential in terms of nutritional value and opportunity to grow was hemp seed versus pea and the whole range. Hemp protein is a combination of gamma globulin and edestin. protein. Now, the reason that's important is that is very similar to the makeup in our blood plasma. So that means that it's very easy to us to assimilate it. We haven't got to do much work to actually digest it, which means, in essence, you don't feel heavy or whatever. You don't get like a fermentation versus digestion, which you can get with soya. And we know the effect of the gym bunnies. Some of those can get a little bit difficult to be around because of fermentation. This is, again, reality. In hemp oil, so hemp seed, you press it, you get oil and you get flour. Flour is about 50% protein. The oil has got omega-3 and omega-6 in the perfect combination. So that's a 1-to-3 ratio. Now, that's important because most people have too much of one or too little of the other, and you get things like psoriasis, dry skin and stuff. So the omega balance is really important. The omega balance 1-to-3 is actually unique to hemp seed oil. You don't get through fish oil. So again, there's a substitution opportunity, which a big pet food company I'm working with are looking at between fish oil and hemp seed oil. Dwindling fish stop squeezing the oil out of them and use hemp seed. So there's big nutritional value both in the oil component and in the protein component of hemp seed. And you're helping the planet while you're doing it. So it just keeps on giving.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, brilliant. Thank you. It just reminded me we really do need to do an episode on hemp protein, because for all of the reasons that you mentioned, and particularly kind of relevant at the moment with the growth of the meatless market that you started off in, actually. I mean, when you look back to where we are now compared to when you sort of discovered hemp, it must be quite different.
The protein side has dramatically increased in interest. It was quite niche even then. I mean, when I was started, obviously corn had a lot of stuff around there. There were some niche brands, Linda McCartney and so on. But the drive I started, or the message I wanted to get out there at the beginning when I was branding the meat-free side, and I stuck that as a strapline, if you like, was meat-free, not taste-free. Because there was this belief you have to give up something. You eat this cardboard. Are you doing something good for your body or animal rights or whatever it is, but you're not going to enjoy the experience. Well, that's not good enough. So you have to look at formulations, and it's exactly the same. Obviously, you go through hemp and CBD, but the formulations that give people the feeling of they're eating real meat. I mean, as a quick anecdote, I had some friends around for pizza and beer, like you do. And, one of them was a real absolute carnivore. So we didn't tell him that the pizzas I'd made were beef-style strips. They'd never seen an animal at all, and just waited. And, of course, the guy said, it's really good, really tender, the meat. Oh, okay, well, there's no meat here, my friend. So you've got to be able to kid people. And this is about how positioning, I think, is so important. We've got a great nutritional benefits. We've got great benefits for the planet and for animal welfare. But to get people to spend money on it, maybe it's a bit cynical, it's got to be fun. They've got to enjoy it. And that comes through in the branding. So you don't sell hemp burgers. You sell, or even veggie burgers. It's about sort of meat with a difference, or meat. There's something you turn into the brand to get people attracted to it. But now you're right now. Now this is taking off anyway. People are getting with it. And there's more and more brands coming through. They're doing interesting, fun things. And you don't have to give anything up to eat meat-free.
Yeah, and the amount of choice on the market now is pretty insane, actually, from a variety of different protein sources. But hopefully more of that will come from hemp. As you say, it's very environmentally beneficial to grow it in general. So that will be a good thing. So, before we get on to the kind of broader topic, maybe you could just tell us a bit about, how are you finding the world of consulting in this space? Are there any interesting projects you can talk about?
Very, and it goes from huge to new start and everything in between. So I'm a consultant to the Hood Group, £1.7 billion turnover, whatever it is, but it's a huge organisation. I think I'm helping in different ways. But the important point is the first conversation I had with the Hood Group included the co-founder, John Gallimore. So this is a general message, I think, where huge organisations are now involved in this sector. And that wasn't the case a few years ago. They were orbiting it, but they're involved in this sector. As I mentioned earlier, I'm on this Food Drink Federation CBD group meeting next month, and we've got Britvic and Pepsi and things like that in the group. So you get these big organisations are now behind this CBD and hemp as well. You've had big toothpaste companies, Colgate looking at with hemp toothpaste and so on. So big brands being involved, which means I get involved in these big brands. And I'm still very pleasantly surprised when I can talk to a big organisation who think it's so important to talk to me about CBD, usually CBD, or it could be a minor cannabinoid. But so that's a huge example. I've just started working with a completely different Kiwana. Kiwana is a sexual wellness brand, which points to one of the other things I know we want to talk about is different formats and so on. So here, this is started by a gynecologist. So it really understands a thing. This also talks to the changing consumer focus and interest, which we'll come on to. So I can be working with a new start brand because I've got a lot of background and connections, obviously, with the industry, or can be involved with a huge organization where CBD is both a thing for the brands they want to bring onto their platform. And also, of course, they got huge position in the cosmetics and beauty, where CBD and other minors can be a big benefit. So for me, this demonstrates where this market is going, not through the various researchers looking at a CAGR and billions of this or dollars of that or whatever, and they don't really know, to, well, if big organizations are getting involved, you can see where this is going to go.
Yeah.
As we're here in the region.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm probably most familiar with the variety of startups in the area and new entrepreneurs, but it's great to hear when big companies are. I mean, they kind of need to, don't they? Because if it's catching on, they all want a slice of that pie, don't they?
They have to. I mean, normally they're talking to me about regulations, legislation, and this is about the narrative. It's not, the black and white facts, because they doesn't really help anybody. But what's it like when you talk to the Home Office or the FSA or MHRA? What are they thinking? What about the parliamentarians? Where do they think it's going to go? What's the will here in Downing? What's Boris Johnson thinking? This will give you a feeling where it's going to go. So it mitigates the perceived risk of big organisations and their compliance and their regulatory and their legal teams to feel comfortable about it. Markets, they're all understanding where the market's likely to go, and formulations. Now, I've got a lot of involvement in the United States, several different organizations, some quite big, and this is to understand a lot of the innovation comes from the US, and then it comes to Europe. So by understanding what's going on in the US, we know what's going to happen in Europe as a sort of a first-to-market opportunity. So there's a marketing bit. There's obviously the science bit, because often the brands don't know what an cannabinoid system is, or an anandamide or whatever. And they need to know this if they're going to have a narrative with their consumers, demonstrate knowledge leadership, which is the big thing going forward in terms of consumer.
Wow, there's loads there. You're certainly being kept busy, which is good. Cool. Okay, well, let's move on to the main part of the show, which is to talk about CBD as a hero ingredient. And obviously, it's been around for a while now, so I think certainly people that listen to the show will be kind of well aware of it. I guess, what are your reflections, having kind of come in the route that you did and now advising a variety of different people across the board? Where are we in the life cycle of the CBD industry? There was definitely quite a fad element feeling to it, or not fad, but like this year's hip new thing. Do you think that's kind of worn off? Where are we now?
Okay, I think CBD has started like the classic product life cycle. So you start with the innovators, the early adopters. These are the guys who'll buy something because it's new. The next iPhone that you don't need, or whatever it might be, it's new. And exactly here, we had lots of people trial it. Now, I've seen lots of numbers around. The numbers I tend to believe say, well, in 2019, about 5 million people tried it, and about 1.1 million stayed. So it's a classic. We've tried it, we don't get it, move on to the next new thing. So from marketing perspective, obviously, the lot of energy should be on grabbing those 4 million back, and then the next lot. So early adopters, innovators. The next part of this cycle is the early minority, and this is a much more people in that chunk. Now, these guys are looking for something different, and this is where the market needs to respond to that, and they want to understand more. They're more likely to do research. They're more lifestyle orientated. They want credibility, confidence, surety. They want track and trace. They want to know where it's coming from, and they're digging a bit deeper. And this is the challenge of the brand now, is to make sure we're giving that information to them. We're giving that confidence. We're giving the surety. A product life cycles, well, if you leave them alone, they go into the plateau and then decline. And this, again, logically with CBD, this is why I say hero ingredient, is you create another product life cycle by innovation. So if all we ever did was stay with 10 ml bottles of oil and say, well, that's it, then eventually, you're going to tail off. Maybe. I say maybe because unlike other ingredients, this one has got tons of scientific evidence that it actually works. And when people try the right option, because there's rubbish out there for sure, they will see the benefits. You know, I'm a CBD junkie and I can talk forever on that. And you do feel the benefits, stress relief, insomnia goes away. You just feel at your best. So it works from experience. And if you want the research to prove it, it's all there. So maybe the CBD tincture will always be there, but that's not good enough. This is really about, for me, occasions of use. And this is about revitalizing the product life cycle. So once I accept that CBD is a good thing, then I'm looking for it as an ingredient in other things that I'm going to consume anyway. So this is now about enhancing existing categories and product types and whatever it might be. And that's where I think a lot of the energy is now definitely going, because this makes the huge difference. People no longer have to think about bottles of oil. They'll think about other things they do during the day. And this is a real benefit in their mouthwash. It could be, you know, in the topicals they put on their aching arm. You know, it could be in the canned beverage I have later on. It could be when I go to sleep. It could be sexual wellness, which we'll go into detail, but, you know, it's there as a real thing, because once people trust CBD as a thing, as giving some benefits, then they're looking forward as an ingredient in other things. And if you look at other hero ingredients, if you like, I don't know if this is the true definition, this one, but say caffeine in energy drinks. So that created a £2 billion subsector in the UK market of soft drinks. Well, 5% of the soft drinks market is energy drinks. And the ingredient there is caffeine. So you can see where just by looking at substitution for subcategories and various sort of cylinders, if you like, you can see a huge potential headspace for CBD once you move away from seeing it as a 10 ml tincture of oil. Because then at the time, the other things that are around CBD were just there as it's got to be in something. You've got to be in a carrier. Whereas now CBD can be not just necessarily the main ingredient, but it could be there something to enhance a cream. So a cream, face creams, hand creams, cooling balms, warming balms, whatever, been around forever. And they're now around with CBD in. So you got your capsicum, whatever, for the heating, you got your hyaluronic acid and your mouthwash, but you're putting CBD in as well to enhance the current ingredients. Hyaluronic acid, I would say, is a hero ingredient itself. So put a couple together, and you enhance the whole experience. I think there's a lot of interest building on the topicals. I'm working with a Premier League football club looking at how topicals could work. Obviously, THC free, underline, forever. But it can really enhance sports problems, aches and pains, this type of thing. So this is the extension. This is why this industry keeps on giving. It gets more and more exciting, because once you've established the provenance, the quality, and the effectiveness of the core material, then you can see how it can enhance and benefit so many different ingredients, so many different categories. It's almost endless, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I think, there's quite a bit there. I guess the notes of caution, I think there were a lot of kind of strange combinations there. Everyone was sort of trying to put CBD into everything. CBD bras, CBD lampshades, CBD.
Come on, man. You know what? I did a thing for the food program a couple of years ago now. Inevitably on CBD. What else would I talk about? And the main point I wanted to make, and they did put it in the broadcast, was whatever formulation, wherever you put CBD, it should be there at a functional level. Not at a functional level where it's going to actually have some benefit. Otherwise, you cheapen the entire concept. If you put aloe vera, 5 molecules in a bottle of shampoo, it's there to enhance the brand, not to give any functional benefit, unless I'm very much mistaken, which I don't think I am. So, it's about being functional and being sensible. So you don't put it in something which can't possibly deliver anything to the body. It's often a challenge with bioavailability and first-pass metabolism, all the stuff that you have to deal with to make sure people get the benefit of it, but actually put into a format which there's no way you can possibly develop anything, because it cheapens the whole concept. So, there's some things in your bras and all that stuff. It should not be there. Well, you can have it if you want, nothing to do with me. But if you ask me from a science point of view, will you get any functional benefit from it? Well, I can't understand how it could possibly happen. So I do know how it'll work in topicals and ingestibles and beverages and that stuff. And part of the challenge with brands is to understand in different formats how to use CBD. It's not one size fits all. There's different types of things you need to do with it to make it, because it's lipophilic, it's not going to be absorbed, you stick in your tea unless you do something clever with it. So these challenges are very important to get right. And I feel, just to finish I'm very passionate about this in many ways, but one of them is I believe the engagement of the consumer with the CBD in any format is profoundly different than an engagement with an energy bar or something. They are taking it, whatever we like to think, for specific reasons. And those reasons might be they can't sleep or they are anxious or whatever. So they expect that they will get some benefits in terms of homeostasis, which are profound. So anybody supplying into that to the consumer have got a responsibility to deliver on that promise. And that's why I get very upset when brands out there or manufacturers there were talking a lot of nonsense, which I know is not true. But unless you're a complete geek like me on CBD, you won't know. So you assume it's correct and you won't get the benefit. And then you start to wonder if CBD is just a hype. It isn't. But it's understanding that you might think that way if you've got the wrong experience.
Yeah. I think a lot of this is a function of, novelty and a general lack of understanding, which I think is still there because it's quite a lot to explain. And I think not having retail for the last couple of years with the pandemic is, there's been an opportunity missed, maybe not through anyone's fault, but that kind of first person engagement in the store when someone can kind of explain what's going on, we've missed that a bit. And so, I think people probably just saw CBD as a thing. If I stick it on, that will grab people's attention. No one really knows what I'm talking about or not. So, I might sell some products that way. It doesn't really matter whether people come back and buy more. It feels now, though, certainly from when you and I talk and some of the projects you're getting involved in, that there are more interesting and different types of products coming along. And if I'm to pick out two kind of areas, one, and if you can kind of give us some examples of some of the interesting stuff you're seeing. So one is around delivery method, because, I think there's probably some more interesting things happening around that. And then also using it in combination with other ingredients. Are you seeing any kind of interesting things?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I've seen a lot of innovation come from the United States. Dissolvable strips, pouches. That's a nice company I'm working with in Swansea, with pouches like on the lip with CBD in and menthol and whatever it is. So these are delivery mechanisms that are really effective. Sprays, bed sprays for pets. I mean, the point is there's lots of crazy ideas, but there's lots of really good ideas that will actually improve delivery and convenience. Oils are great, but, you don't want to be in the train trying to get some oil into your mouth. But now you've got dissolvable strips and pouches and other patches and things like that, which are different, which are effective. But I think when CBD is then incorporated into products that you're consuming anyway, as I said, the occasions of use, that's when actually I think you can get really excited. So beverages obviously is a big one. And as I mentioned, Pepsi on this Food and Drink Federation side. So I think that speaks where this is likely to go.
Yeah, I mean, like tincture's sort of predominant version of it that you get in most shops. And so you gave a few more examples of that. But then I guess, are there any kind of other ingredients you're seeing being combined with CBD that are interesting?
Yeah, vitamins is definitely a go-to, especially around COVID. We've seen obviously vitamin supplements plus CBD, which I think is a big one, and it's taken off really quickly. Actually, one of the quickest growing formats in the UK is gummies. So gummies, again, a lot of gummies in the UK aren't particularly good, quite frankly. In the US, there's some really amazing ones, flavors, mouthfeel. Obviously, you want it to be a pleasurable experience. So the longer you keep chewing the gummy, the more absorption you'll get of CBD. So it should be a nice mouthfeel, not too sugary, not too hard, not too, it's got to be somewhere in the middle. That's quite a growing thing. Other things, I mentioned like say on topicals, capsicum and so on for the heating side. Where you can do it, melatonin. Melatonin and CBD is a great combination sleep aid.
Illegal in the UK, unfortunately.
I'm afraid it is, yeah, absolutely.
Which seems to be, out of step with some of our international friends.
Well, it is massively out of step. And, one of the things I was hoping after Brexit to find some benefits from it. Don't want to get political in brackets, but there is we can do our own thing. Now, our own thing should be consumer choice. And we need to respond to consumer choice. The Health Food Manufacturers Association, Graham Keane, they did a thing earlier this year. It was what's called Health of the Nation Lockdown 2021. 20% more people last year started using nutritional supplements versus 2019. And 1 in 3 adults said they're using it now because of COVID. So the consumer, so this is quite an important sort of macro stuff, if you like. The consumers made a decision to take control of their own health because not all states did a very good job in doing it for them. So it's taking personal responsibility, which, well, they should have always been doing anyway, but nevertheless, it's happening. And one of the drives is to move to supplements and immune support and this type of thing. And luckily, CBD has got a big thing to play there, huge thing to play on immune support. So that's a thing where you want to make, therefore, you need to react to the marketplace, back to the consumers, and provide that range of products that actually deliver that consumer that immune support. So now we're seeing maybe combinations of other minor cannabinoids, like CBG is a big growth thing. CBG is more effective against MRSA, MSRA, than many of the sort of standard antibiotic solutions to MRSA. So that's quite an interesting one. It's neuroprotective, and it's also reacts in a different way with CB receptors than, so CBD inhibits the antagonist of an andamide, whereas CBG is an agonist, so it has an effect directly with the receptors. So we got these things come up as well. There's even less understanding of CBG and others than there is obviously on CBD, but I can see this as something that it'll be a big thing. The research is starting to build up and it's getting very exciting. So it's combining all the minor cannabinoids and terpenes and flavonoids, so other things from the plant in different ways. And it's adding things to enhance the effectiveness of CBD. So if you put a warming cream on, then CBD won't cause any warming, but capsicum certainly will. So, you've got to add these other ingredients with it anyway. If you're making a beverage, then you've got to have the right type of CBD, because the wrong type sticks to the side of the can. People don't know that, but it's important. So again, as I said before, CBD, adding it to a new product isn't just about sticking it in, mix it, job done. You got to think about how it interacts with the ingredients, container, delivery, the bioavailability.
Yeah, I guess this is how markets evolve, isn't it? I mean, there was certainly a lot of people just thought I could just need a CBD oil and that's it. But I think unless you put some effort into it, CBD oil can taste not very nice. And you actually want the person to want to take it more.
Exactly, Lucia. It's just like what I was saying before about the meat-free stuff. I mean, cardboard is good for me. Most people won't do it. If it tastes like pond water and you just want to get out of the way, it reminds me of taking cod liver oil when I was a kid. Hated every morning, horrible experience. And it doesn't work. When you're forced, you have no choice because you're 12, that's one thing. But when you're an adult and you don't want this rubbish in your mouth, you're going to swallow it and take your orange juice, but then you're going to get absorbed because you need to sit there for a minute with the oil in your mouth. So it's got to be something pleasant, with a big flavouring on the type of carrier oil or, whatever it is. And when you know it works, then you'll take other things that take longer for the effect, like capsules and so on, but you've got no taste. But to say you want to, next thing you do in your trip to the restaurant, not the restaurant, maybe a cafe, whatever, you might take a beverage with CBD in, or a coffee with CBD, or chocolate with CBD, because you know it works.
Yeah, things are moving on. And how are you seeing the brands evolve themselves?
Some brands are not trying to evolve because they don't know what to do next. Often, it's not their fault. I mean, don't get me wrong, but, you get a lot of product-focused brands in any area. They love the product, but they don't understand how to get the message over, maybe. The brand needs to extend, expand. So I'm seeing some brands are now looking to be maybe leaders, or certainly focus on a particular vertical like sports. So look how to adapt that for sports. Obviously the beverage side, sexual wellness, pets. There's a whole range of different ways to look at the verticals in terms of focusing and being known to be, the master of that one. Packaging always, like any market, they'll look at different types of, packaging, single-use packs in one box. So you can have, one thing, easy use, snap strips. So we're looking at always, again, a lot of this is from the States, where a format that has worked. Another thing, hand sanitizer is a good one. The one you snap and do your hands, same sort of thing. One you snap and then you can rub it on your forehead and gets absorbed. It works really well. So like any market, as I said, the brands that are now going to be successful are focusing on customer support and knowledge leadership is the main one, I would say. And that is it'll be the biggest delineator on brands going forward is you can trust me. Either it's a retail brand that's already trusted, like say Holland & Barrett or so on, where they know their stuff, or it's a manufacturing brand who can show they've got everything lined up. So going back to the consumer focusing on provenance, so they can know that, Joe in the lower 40 grew that particular plant that ended up eventually in the bottle. I can prove to you that I'm controlling everything. I can prove to you that my extractor isn't spot purchasing biomass in the market with no sort of onboarding of the farmer. All these things need to be done, because one of the things with hemp, the good and bad of hemp, the good is it's a great driver. It takes cadmium and other contaminants from the soil and then incorporates it into the thing. Chernobyl have been using it for decades to clean up the sun. So it's great at doing that. But you don't want to use the hemp to make extracts for your CBD for very clear reasons. So you've got to know where the biomass comes from, how it's grown, on the type of ground, organically grown, whatever. You need to understand the manufacturing plant understands what EU GMP is, for example. So that's very, very important to make sure that the brands that will stand and flourish are the ones that can do several things really well. Like any brand, most successful brands don't do one thing well, they do everything well. If they don't do it themselves well, do best in class, and they get them to do it. And that's what this is now, I think, evolving into, because we have to satisfy the needs of the early minority and then the big lump and all this as this PLC develops. So they're doing everything properly. They can prove they're doing everything properly. And they make the product accessible. They look at price point and all this type of thing. And they can attract the big retail chains, because the big retail, I know from supplying Tesco, will be absolutely clear on ensuring what you're doing from the plant, the final product, is best in class. Otherwise, they're not going to do it. They need to be able to step up to the requirements of big retailers. So big retailers have a big job to do in driving the industry forward, because they will drive the requirement for that standard of quality. I'm working one major retailer, including with the British Standards Institute, on a consumer-facing compliance brand. This is really important because novel foods, for example, it's completely unknown, I would say, to most consumers. They're not aware of it at all. It's a B2B issue that we face. So being compliant with novel foods means nothing to the consumer. So the important thing here is to have a brand, eventually, hopefully, a public BSI brand, which would be the Kite Mark, which demonstrates compliance with a range of things. I'm a consumer. I don't know much about CBD, but I want to give it a try. If I see that mark on that one, it's going to be what it says on the bottle, because that's not always the case. The provenance, security, there won't be lashings of cadmium to go with my CBD. All that stuff is done, and it'll be consistently the same. And that's what the industry needs. It needs proof to the consumer that they can buy and be assured what they're buying is what they think. That's critical. There are brands out there that shouldn't be in the market, quite a few of them. They need to be removed. Novel foods as an exercise won't change that situation, because many of those brands aren't complying with anything anyway. Why comply with novel foods? This gets it out of the way. So I'm very involved in that. My UCAS group are involved in standardization, primarily on methodology. Unless the lab gets it right, then your label's wrong. It's as simple as that. So the lab's got to get it right. So this is a very big chessboard, lots of different players on. But eventually, the only thing that counts is that the consumer gets the right thing, because it can really help them, help society, and helps the planet, because hemp is all that wonderful things that in a different conversation, I'm sure.
That is perfect. Thank you. And a really nice way to round that out. I could have gone on for a bit longer, but I was conscious of time. A very nice final line from you on why we should care about this, which is great. Thank you so much, Tony. I think we need to do one on food, actually, and hemp seed and hemp protein separately. But thank you for sharing your thoughts on CBD as well.
Pleasure. Real pleasure. Anush, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers, Tony. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please subscribe, rate, review and share the podcast. It will help me spread the good word on how this amazing industry is developing. I work with various cannabis startups to help them get funded and grow. I also work with corporates and international cannabis companies to help them understand and navigate the European cannabis sector. We're working with some great clients across the cannabis value chain, and we'd love to help you too. Please visit www.canverse.global to get in touch.